Today's video, we're going to talk about human versus automated translation methods for website conversion rates. Whether you're sending traffic at a landing page on your website or some random page on your website, you have to think about what it is, what language you're going to put everything in. Because naturally, the default thinking is, oh, just put it in English. We're just marketing to people in the United States. That's all we need to do. You can make a lot more money if you also translate your content, at least particularly putting things into Spanish, because 14% of the population alone in the United States is speaking Spanish nowadays. You'll make considerably more money, not just because of that 14% per se, but that 14% will convert 2 to 3 times as good as an average user who's not Spanish speaking, because you're now have basically narrowed the competition for that Spanish speaker. You're only one of a couple people versus 10, 20, 30 people who have a website offering that product or service in general that's offering it in Spanish. So realistically, 30, 40, 50% of your profit could be from the Spanish speakers if you just cater to the Spanish speaking crowd and you do it right. But doing it right is very subjective. There's several ways to do this, anymore at least, which is why I decided to make a video just directly about the topic of how do you actually translate the content in order to get this huge, massive increase in profitability from the traffic you're driving to your site, given you can do it the cheap way that costs nothing, or you can do it the way that costs like $3 a word, and it all will affect your results. Granted, but the key thing is you got to know where's the sweet spot, because naturally, not for everybody, spending $3 a word to get the best translation isn't going to be worth it. You'll get 80% of the results going to the 1 penny per word translation and just leaving it at that. So I want to put all that in a frame of reference in today's video so you understand kind of where you should be in the mix if you're already considering translating the site into a few languages, or you just want to get more results out of your traffic and you already got your content translated. Upgrading the translation, you can understand how much of a profit gain you can make from your traffic just doing that alone. And then with that said, I'll have some actual case studies. If you watch to the end of the video, you'll actually see where we've upgraded the translation method that we used. Manual to semi-manual to automated to manual translation, and then also manual translation to like super manual, or if we used a high-end copywriter who speaks that language. What is the difference in profitability that we gained using one versus the other, and specifically in terms of conversion rates itself? I will go through that as well for you on today's video. So with that said, I am Corey Zyman, owner of Guaranteed PPC. We're a PPC/advertising agency that works on Facebook, Google, and so forth campaigns to get more results out of those campaigns, more profit per dollar spent. We're the only agency in the world that offers a so-called guaranteed service where we bring you more profitability from your ad campaign up front before we take a management fee at our advertising agency. So with that said, I have 20 years of experience doing online marketing, translated many websites to make campaigns work better, and been doing so in a direct capacity at our advertising firm for 10 years now. So there's a lot of experience being given to you in this particular video. So getting into the content here. So the options you actually have to take, assuming, Corey, I'm sold on translating our content into Spanish to get more from the Spanish speaking crowd in our city, in our state, whatever. Or I'm selling internationally and I'm just relying on people using the Google Translate to translate my website, versus I want to start translating my site for all the different countries that we're marketing to. You have like an e-commerce business. You got these main 4 categories, if you will, of options of how and to different levels you can translate your core content that might start out in English, or if you will, if you're starting out in another language, it could be in French, you translate it into English. Same rules apply. That is, you have Google Translate, which is obviously free. You got automated plus manual editing. So there's a lot of people don't understand that this exists. But if you use tools like WPML, which is a plugin that you can use to translate content, a WordPress plugin, 40% of websites use WordPress, which is why I bring this up. With that said, instead of doing purely manual translation, translating something using a human from one language to another, okay, there's basically a half-ass approach to doing the same thing, where You use Google Translate to translate something. Then you have humans come in and check how Google translated it and see how accurate it is and add a couple like corrections where it really fit, and then having it so that it's not purely just using Google Translate by itself, but for the most part, I don't know, a 500-word document, this person who speaks natively that language might make, 5 corrections or so over, a 2-minute period of time. And then it takes it a bit further and gets the major screw ups that Google Translate has and irons those out. So you can go ahead and do that. That costs about a penny per word. I recommend that basically at a minimum if you are spending any kind of decent money on traffic to your site. At that low price, not get that done versus totally free. Don't be the guy who just settles on free and thinks free's the best, because that's not going to be the case most of the time. You also have full manual with a non-copywriter. For about 10 cents a word, you can get something translated on your website to basically any language for about 10 cents a word. That is somebody who doesn't understand, though, any kind of copywriting techniques. And you may say, well, this is translation. What do you have to have a sales copywriter that specializes in sales copywriting translating the content? Answer to that is there are certain things, verbiage and colloquialisms and so forth, that a good copywriter will build in and weave into their copy. The person that's written this document or web page, it feels like that person's speaking to you directly, like a one-on-one conversation. Copy that really sells the best, that's what it feels like. And with that said, we have sayings in English, you can use that in copy, but if you use that same saying to somebody who's in Mexico, they're not going to get it. It's just going to be like, whoa. And the bigger problem isn't that they aren't going to understand it. The bigger problem is you now lose what that saying actually achieved for the user, and you can't use other sayings that are common in Mexico for that Mexican user that would get the conversion rate to be increased, because people like to use sayings and they like to use metaphors a lot in terms of understanding things. It takes something that's complex and gets it distilled down. And the quicker you can communicate something on a website or landing page, the more conversion rate you're typically going to get, because they want to spend as little energy as possible to get the point of what you have. They only have so much energy that they can devote to the thing. So if you spent 2 minutes to describe something that could have took a minute, assuming that they got the same level of information, you're always going to convert better for the person that spent 1 minute to communicate those same things than the two, because there's going to be drop off from that 1 minute to 2 minute time frame there. You take away all the inefficiencies of what a native speaker could put into writing when you switch it into another language by default. So with that said, you could go the full distance with this and go full manual with an actual trained copywriter translating it. And you could go to websites like Upwork.com and literally find a Spanish-speaking sales copywriter. So sales copywriters just write text to try to get people to buy stuff on your website, on your landing pages and whatnot. There are actual, ones that speak Spanish, or Spanish is their first language, but they can also speak English as a secondary language. And so when they're writing, they can use those sayings in Spanish that only somebody who speaks Spanish would understand, and build that into your writing. And then as a result of that, get more results than somebody who is just taking it to a translator to just translate for accuracy, is going to be able to do. With that said, those are your kind of 4 options when you're going to translate something and want to actually get more out of the traffic you already have. By the way, to get the most out of this traffic, if you're running like a Google search campaign, you can just set the settings to the language in question. If you want to translate your landing page into Spanish, you can take your campaign, make another campaign just for the Spanish speakers, set in the campaign location settings to Spanish, and somebody who speaks Spanish, now you can have a pre-designated ad that's translated into Spanish for those users. And then when they click that Spanish written ad, it takes them to your Spanish landing page that you translated from English into Spanish. And then that's where the big results come, truly. You can do that for the other platforms as well. If you're going to go ahead and take advantage of what I'm telling you here today, that's what you're going to ultimately want to do. So even though you're targeting the same city or same state, you have different campaigns for different speakers. In the US, Spanish is really going to only be the one that's worth to do, if you will. But if you're in Canada, a lot of times we'll do English and French or whatnot. Ultimately, in a country like India, we'll do English and then the native Indian language there, which I can't think of off the top of my head. Hindi, sorry. there's a few there, but like Hindi. And we'll do both there because some people just like to, we'll just put it this way. In India, when we're marketing there, if somebody starts typing in English on Google, we want them to see an English ad. If they start typing in Hindi, we want them to see a Hindi ad. So that's more so what I'm talking about here. You're catering to people's preferences. When they prefer something one way and you try to force them to go the other way, you're going to take a hit on your conversion rate. Going fully with this and try to hire an Indian-speaking sales copywriter or a Spanish-speaking sales copywriter, you're going to be spending like $1 at the very low end in terms of fees, assuming they're in America, without being too like racist or prejudiced here. Somebody who's in America is going to be better at copywriting, mainly because it's such a cutthroat environment in the United States in the advertising space that somebody who's trained to compete against other Americans is going to do much better than somebody who's in India, who their competition's basically 10% of the level that it is in the United States at winning in terms of having to consistently beat other advertisers in the United States. Yes, the price is much more, but it's like trying to take a pea shooter to a gunfight. Maybe you can hire the person that's in India if you were competing in India and be okay and get by. But if you're trying to compete against Americans with somebody that's from India, forget about it. And for that matter, just as a side, I get people all the time, even from like Australia and whatnot, and they'll say, I want to hire you, but due to the exchange rates, I don't want to hire you. You're too expensive. And what my thing is I'm used to just beating the people in the United States. Yes, the price might seem a little expensive, but this is not a game where everybody just gets to show up and you get the participation trophy. You either get the best funnel for your campaigns to send traffic through, that's the most efficient, and then the ad platforms want to send most of it to you, or you basically make no money. So why do you care if you have to spend a little bit more? And then as a result of that, you're not going to be like average, but you're going to beat them, or instead of beating them, you're going to really, really beat them. There's no reason to get a discounted marketing service that actually gets the most results. It's just short-sighted thinking. So as a result of that, if you want to win in India and you have an Indian copywriter, you're going to absolutely freaking smash anybody that's even trying to do the same thing. Maybe if you have no competition, that's good enough, but rarely is a good copywriter that charges $3 an hour versus 30 cents an hour, or sorry, $3 a word versus 30 cents a word, not going to be worth it, because the conversion rates are going to come up so much that it offsets it anyway. Literally speaking, it's easier to make efficiency improvements in your business with the marketing than it is to make efficiency improvements with the product or service that you're selling. Just hire a better marketer. Yes, you got to be able to have somebody who, they're not just scamming you, they're charging a high price, but they still don't know what the hell's going on. But assuming you know how to find people who really know how to get results, you're always going to get your money's worth going just to the next level. Yes, you get diminishing returns at some level there, but usually people just think cheaper is better. And when it comes to marketing and the whole marketing advertising space, that's absolutely not the case. There's a reason why somebody charges $1,000 an hour and $10 an hour. And it isn't just them, having a bigger name. That does play into factor some, but respectively, the reason why those people are paying that $1,000 an hour is because that person can get damn good results. And $10 guy could get fantastic results like the $1,000 an hour guy. He would charge $1,000. You get what you pay for. So anyway, with that said, big difference between free and $3 a word, which $3 a word for sales copywriting, that is going to be more so than what the reality is. The $1 a word is going to be for somebody who copywriter. If you want the real, somebody who knows how to get people to read and then buy, $3 is more so the rate, if not a little bit more. So that gives you a general idea of the cost associated with going down the list here of not expensive to most expensive, but each one gets a little bit better results. Now the question is, like I was mentioning at the start of this video, how do I know which one is like overkill, where if I go to the next level, I'm not really getting much more return. Therefore, I don't really need to go all the way and hire the best of the best of the best. An easy way to tell that, given every business is unique, would be honestly just to reach out to my agency and ask me at guaranteeppc.com. I give a free consultation. You can tell me what you're doing, and I can tell you what, whether it's worth it or not. And then know for sure. I've worked on hundreds of campaigns, hundreds of different niche markets. I pretty well know, for the most part, before I even get into it, at least give you a ballpark over the general range of where you should end up, how sophisticated you should be with this. Without even talking to me, you could easily just the core principle is how much competition is there in your space. The more competition, the more likely it is you want to go all the way with this, if you will, or where it will pay off, we'll just say. Which, by the way, at our advertising agency, we do not charge a fee. Like I mentioned at the start of this video, before we get our clients an increase in profitability, which is an increase in profitability that offsets the management fee that we charge. So there's no fee per se. We pay ourselves out of what we make you in addition up front. So you can reach out to me if you're interested in that, and I can tell you if we can offer you that guarantee, because we don't work with just any client, but at least you'd find out what we could get for you if you reach out. We also sell ad templates. I mentioned we've worked in over 100 different niche markets before. If we worked in your niche market, you would be silly to try to figure out all this stuff for yourself when we can give you the exact ad, exact landing page, exact campaign templates that work for your niche market. These templates work so good. We got people using the templates to start campaigns that just generate leads and then sell the leads and have a business in and itself just from that. Or they wanted to get it into e-commerce and they didn't know how, and they just took a template, got the item that we were selling for country, client in country A, sell it in country B. The item is like an item you can easily pick up from China and have a turnkey business out of it. Anyway, if you're interested in that, you can also obviously reach out to me. It's also at my site at guaranteeppc.com. But getting back to the content and the topic at hand here again, here's the key thing also that's going to differentiate what one of these four you want to really ultimately invest in. For simple service landing pages, and I'm speaking from the context of paid advertising because that's what I specialize in, and therefore I know the most about it, therefore I'll speak primarily about it. But if you're running an ad campaign for like a cleaning service or personal injury or like a legal service or like a custom cabinetry business, the copy matters way less the writing and at the level the writing is at, because people don't usually read that much on the page before they have convinced them to call. They mainly see the headline and read that and then look at the images. For all that reason, the copy is less important. Whereas if you're talking about like an e-commerce business and you're going to buy a product and you don't know much about this product and you got to read to know much about it, it's actually very important to go ahead and have the right copywriting. And it's actually way more important than people realize. Most people think, I can have all these products. I can have AI even just generate the descriptions. That's a bunch of, most people make the mistake of having too many items too soon. You'd be better off with less items. Do better content on your product pages, better video, better text content, and do it properly and then add other items back in. What they try to do is say, add all these items and then Google will be able to rank us well because we have so many items. And then at the end of the day, page to take people to from Google versus the person who's spent proper time on their page adding good copywriting and so forth. Google's going to say this person over here deserves the traffic, you don't, and then you're just wasting your time. Your big chance with Google to show them you have a good site, you killed it basically. So don't do that. Anyway, that puts into perspective pretty well, more than I would say anything, how I could describe whether or not you need the Spanish-speaking sales copywriter or the Italian sales copywriter and so forth there. Now, getting into the actual use cases, as I mentioned I would get into here, I'm going to give you the results that we got for a personal injury lawyer as well as a travel insurance company that we worked with in the past, where we translated the material into Spanish. More commonly, we translate landing pages into Spanish because there's the most Spanish-speaking people for the most part, and that's just something that we do. It's what I have the most experience with. Yes, occasionally we will translate a landing page into Italian and this and that, other languages, to get more out of a campaign, and it's a great way to scale a campaign, by the way. If you're advertising in Italy, doing one page for Italian, like I said, and if they speak Italian primarily, you send them to the Italian page. If they speak English, you send them to the English page still, like I was talking about before. But anyway, that said, I wanted to go into what results we got. And results meaning, what is the impact on the conversion rate we had before and after upgrading the content? So before I do that, I just want to also say, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, you should, because not only do I have tons of other information like this on this channel, but if you want to actually be better than your competition in terms of the topic of paid ads and you want to make millions of dollars running paid ads for your business. If you haven't subscribed to this channel and started learning from the content on this channel, given it's content from somebody who spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours doing ad testing and strategy, which you're not going to find with other YouTubers that are trying to sell you a course. It's a bunch of BS. If you're going to pay attention to anything, this is the stuff you should pay attention to first. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, I'm convinced you're not serious about becoming a millionaire running ads for your business, so you should subscribe. Furthermore, if you haven't checked out my blog on my site at guaranteeppc.com, where we have literal step-by-step instructions that we use to get results for our clients on a guaranteed basis that you can copy paste to your own accounts, then I'm also not too convinced you're not serious about making millions of dollars running ads for your business either. So you should definitely do both of those if you haven't already. But getting back to getting into the results, the personal injury lawyer, first of all, what we had here was we just started out with Google Translation by itself. Normally, when I'm working for a client, we're able to obviously create a landing page in another language. We don't have to get any clearance from the client. We're not going to pay money to get your landing page translated by a sales copywriter generally for free, because it gets obviously pricey and it's not a part of our advertising agency service, at least by default. So we had that by default, translated all the ads. The ad specifically was translated by an actual Spanish-speaking person. It wasn't an automated translation. To give you an idea of how well this can work, going from Google Translation to full manual translation with a human non-copywriter here. So we started off with how much is it worth actually hiring an actual Spanish-speaking person to translate the page. We went ahead and tried to run our ads to Spanish-speaking people and was right away seeing, wow, there's a lot of people who search for a personal injury lawyer in Spanish. Then we went and hired the Spanish-speaking person to actually translate it, not just use Google. We went from a 24% conversion rate with Google Translate version to a 26% conversion rate with the human translated version of that same page, of the English page translated into Spanish, if you will, which is obviously about a 10% increase in conversion rates. This gives you a general idea right off the bat of kind of like what you can expect if you go ahead and hire a human. Is the increase in returns you're going to get that much better? Is it worth it to do? Yes, it is still worth it to do, but it's not going to be something that's going to fundamentally change your business. You may have other inefficiencies in your campaigns that you're running that you want to focus on first. But if you want a little bit better results, the moral of the story here is that you should have an actual human translate the page. Now, from there, though, getting into the travel insurance space, where we sell travel insurance through the website. So this is more like an e-commerce website. We're not like generating a phone call or whatever. Before, what we did was we had a human translate the page into Spanish, okay? 8% conversion rate is what we were getting before. Having it translated into Spanish by a human, but that's an actual trained sales copywriter. Like I said, makes a damn bit of difference if you have an actual copywriter write your content versus somebody who doesn't know anything about sales copywriting whatsoever, and which obviously people don't want to do, because finding a sales copywriter that speaks Spanish as their primary language is not easy to do. Just hiring a good sales copywriter that knows what they're doing is hard enough. Then you got to find one that knows what they're doing that also speaks Spanish as their primary language. A lot of people just say, I don't care about, F it, I'm not going to worry about it. Well, if you want to know, is it worth the trouble? We went ahead and then had an actual Spanish-speaking, primary language is Spanish, had them translate the content that actually knows how to write good sales copywriting, has good experience in that area or field, went from an 8% conversion rate to a 12.5% conversion rate, which is more like a 50% increase in conversion rate. So huge difference there, going from one to the other, which shows you having somebody who can speak, to translate your page that actually knows anything about sales copywriting makes a huge, huge difference. With that, is worth it for you to do at the end of the day. So to say you need to have a sales copywriter write your content, one thing. If you want to distill this down, if it's worth it to have an actual sales copywriter write the content on your site, it's worth it that the translator that's going to translate it from English into another language, or whatever your language is, into another language, it's worth it to have an actual sales copywriter to do it there as well. Because if you don't, you're going to take, basically, the reason why we got such a big increase here is because when we got it translated the first time, it took away all the elements of the page that was originally written by the copywriter, our English-speaking copywriter, got rid of a lot of the stuff that made it convert well. That's the big idea here, if you will. You want to pick up something more than anything here. And when we actually had a copywriter that's, as good as the English copywriter, but also understands Spanish really, really well, we got most of the return back. Naturally, the reason why you translate it into another language is because you want more conversion rates. You will get that just doing that. However, if you don't have a copywriter translating it, you're going to lose some of the gains you got by having an actual copywriter write the text for your page that you're not going to lose if you have an actual trained copywriter translating the content as well, that knows that other language and actually knows the discipline of sales copywriting. A lot of people, they don't understand how much an actual sales copywriter is worth in terms of their value. They say, $3 a word. I know somebody who can write for 10 cents a word. And sure, anybody in the marketing and advertising space can promise you anything for any price. There's guys who can offer PPC services for you for $50 a month. And I promise you, if you wanted to find somebody who would offer it to you for $40, you could find it. Where does it stop? And it's all relative at the end of the day. A smart person that really, the people that make the most money understand they're unemotional about prices of things, and they understand that what I try to say on this channel all the time is if somebody is really good at marketing and advertising, they're not going to need to take a low rate because they can start their own little website doing what you're doing, or something that's not that hard to replicate. Find somebody to do the work on the back end. In a lot of fields, it's the marketing and advertising that's the differentiation point. They're not going to fall for your antics that you'd be lucky if you had a job or whatever, because everybody wants to hire a good copywriter that can get results. That's why the rates are so high. Somebody who can't get a job charges what they can afford to charge, and there's always somebody who wants a cheap rate, so they can sell their dog shit service to them, because there's always somebody who wants a cheap rate, and that'll never change. What you're not going to do is automatically assume cheaper is better. You're going to actually assume the opposite. Better, more expensive is better. Your goal should be to hire the most expensive person you can find, as long as they get results. And ultimately, that should be your default thought. The smart people who make the most money in doing online marketing think that by default. Yes, you'll get scammed once in a while, paying a lot and not getting the results, but you'll also never get to the big result that you want if you aren't at least trying to hire the person who's worth their weight in gold either. So it comes, getting screwed once in a while comes hand in hand with trying to find the best people. That's just the way that it is. But you should always try to find the best person, because by default, the best person, the best writer, the best graphics designer, all that, it's all going to be the way to get the most money out of your market. And that's just by default how it works. So anyway, with that said, that gives you an idea of where in this general range of services of how to translate your content where you should be. And if you have a question, like I said, you can easily reach out to me at my firm. But other than that, you can also leave me a comment down in the comment section below, and I'll be able to answer any questions you have about this. Or if you have any ad-related question, feel free to ask me anyway. I'm more than happy to get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours time. But I encourage you to go ahead and try this. Like I said, if you just want to see, like I did, translate something into with Google Translate, create an ad in Spanish or another language, try driving people to that instead of the one that you have now, and just see what happens. And if it does get higher click-through rates or higher conversion rates, then either go to the next stage and see how it does for you. And if it works, go to the next stage, next stage, or just go ahead and assume that you want to go all the way with it right away. Go ahead and spend the extra time if you want. But I encourage you to at least try it, because you'll obviously never know how much money you're leaving on the table if you don't go ahead and try this for yourself. Golden general rule is, if you go ahead and translate your website into different languages, you're going to make more money. It's just a matter of how much more you're going to make. You won't know that unless you go ahead and try it. So anyway, hope that worked for you. It provided you a lot of value and a lot of future money in your business. And hope to see you on the next one, where we have another great strategy for you then.